The car business is like any other business in that you have to make periodic investments. Where it diverges, the size of those investments. Usually a lot more zeros. That's why most bets very safe. Then there are the folks in Auburn Hills. They every once in a while like to back the dark horse. What is the dark horse, you ask? Well, it could be taking a very capable and somewhat practical off-road vehicle and dropping in an engine that can only be described as the equivalent of driving around with your hair on fire.
Hey MotoMan, Tommy and I are standing next to what is obviously the competitor to the Jeep Wrangler 392. This is the Ford Bronco with the Sasquatch package. Of course, there is a Raptor Bronco that would more directly compete with the Jeep 392, but let's talk about, Tommy, what makes the 392 such a great off-roader.
Well, first you got to start with that 6.4 liter HEMI V8. What's the horsepower?
470 horsepower, Tommy.
And the craziest thing is that is the first time that Jeep has offered from the factory a V8 in an open-topped Jeep since the CJ series in 1981. And by the way, the high output of the 304 AMC engine, just 150 horsepower.
And you know what? Jeep enthusiasts had been asking for decades for them to put a HEMI under the hood of a Wrangler, and I think finally, because of the Bronco and direct competition, they did. Now here's a fun fact, Tommy. The HEMI didn't actually fit under the hood of a Wrangler, so they actually had to re-engineer most of the suspension and even some of the chassis underneath to make that big old V8 fit.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on today's journey. Now that we have the pleasantries out of the way, 5,103 pounds, or depending on Express your weights and measures, 2,314 kilograms. Now, huge point of order. Tommy used to have the most basic Wrangler about a year ago. How much more is this than that? Over 1,150 pounds. With that. Oh, yeah, that's... no other Jeep feels like that. That said, huge point of information, 0 to 60 from the manufacturer, 4.5 seconds. That's quick for a vehicle that weighs as much as an electric car. Another huge point of information, this is 470 pounds of torque as well. And that's really what this engine is all about. Pulling power. Tommy and Roman could tell you more about the pulling power off-road, but here on-road, very usable. I would argue could probably get you out way over your skis entirely too fast. It is well matched with an 8-speed torque converter automatic. And what's unusual here is the pairing of this transmission with this engine, because if we're honest with one another, that's a very old world engine. It's got a certain charm to it, a good charm, actually a wonderful charm, which translates to a different personality. It's very unlike the 4-liter twin turbocharged V8s we get from Germany that are matched with a dual clutch transmission. So it's harder for this to provide, I guess, the on-road performance that those do. And what's happening here is nothing. The transmission is not standing in the way of the engine, or really I should say the personality of this engine, which really is magical in its on-road performance. That said, fuel economy, you wouldn't expect it to be good, and here it is abysmal. The US EPA calls it for 13, 17, 14 combined. As you and I are doing this, we're getting an average of 11, and I am watching the fuel gauge go down as we get more aggressive through the canyons, which admittedly this car is really not meant for.
Now there's a whole bunch of other features that the 392 comes with. One of them, of course, is the Extreme Recon package. What does that give you?
Well, it gives you the 35-inch tall tires, which elevate the Jeep above the insanely capable Rubicon that it is. It also has a standard all-wheel drive system, or 4-wheel drive system, depending on how you look at it. So there's no 2-wheel drive mode on the 392.
Yeah, and of course, as an off-roader, it has all the goodies. Now with the optional 35s, you get a much better approach angle, you get a much better departure angle.
The 392 Wrangler has front and rear locking differentials, and at a push of a button you can do that, as well as disconnect the sway bar for the maximum articulation in the front for tackling those large boulders.
And you get some pretty robust Danas underneath the axles so that they can handle that extra wheel size and that extra torque and horsepower that come out of that Hemi.
So the off-road gurus of the Colorado Rockies just correctly pointed out that this is a Rubicon, which means it's the most off-road capable Wrangler on offer. If that were not enough, it's got an extra 2-inch lift fitted as standard. So that's all fine and good, but how does that translate to on-road driving dynamics, specifically ride quality? Well, it drives exactly as you'd expect. A tall, big, heavy vehicle with a lot of heavy-duty off-road equipment underneath it, which means it's not a Challenger, it's not a Charger, and even those are not really the pinnacle of driving dynamics because of their size and age. But this, at least it's credible. I think the big point we got to focus on here is the 800-pound gorilla in the space, and that is its sort of indirect competition, which I'll be bringing up a couple of times in this episode, and that would be the G-Wagen, specifically the G63. And there, that is not the pinnacle of driving dynamics, also because of its age and size, but there it has a bit more refinement. Granted, it's probably more than twice the price of this, but still a good comparison because the equation is the same.
My favorite thing about that vehicle is the gold accents, and I asked why gold, or some people look at it as bronze, but the Jeep guys told me it's gold because they wanted to make it the gold standard.
Incredibly good point, Tommy, but I would slightly disagree. At least to me, it looks more like a bronze rather than a gold. That applies to the trim all the way around the vehicle, underneath the hood, as well as the embroidery on the seats, which pivots our discussion to details. Jeep, they're better than most because they're more playful, and that's a big function of the people behind the scenes at design. You guys met Ralph Gilles many times before on the show. He runs all of Stellantis design, but this is more of a function of Mark Allen. Man has a great sense of humor, and he runs all of Jeep design. Then there's Chris Benjamin. He runs interior design. Put the two of them together, that's why you get all these details we've seen on other Wranglers. Things like the owner's manual in a bag, and the bag is a map showing elevation changes, reinforcing off-roading. And then my favorite, a plaque on the rear door that lists all the tech details specific to the 392. Then we come back to this whole gold bronze thing and the purple color. And they call it rain, get it? Purple rain, see where we're going with this whole thing? But the purple with the gold or the bronze, whichever direction you go here, to me, I don't see a Jeep Wrangler. I see Barney, the purple dinosaur. Remember him?
Now, one of the cool things about that Hemi is it's got a little button on the console that looks like two little raccoon eyes. And what does that button do, Tommy?
That button opens up the baffles in the exhaust and gives you some incredible sound.
So a bit of an aside to what Tommy just shared with you. Yes, I will admit I am not a Jeep guy, but I was excited to drive this. Why? Because it's got a Hemi, and it's just stupid and magnificent at the same time. So I get back from Christmas with a family up in Oregon, so I pick it up at LAX. And I start it, and those baffles open, and you hear the sound of that magnificent Hemi that I know so well from Challengers. But then you start driving it around, and I'm like, this thing, it's really quiet. Matter of fact, it's not that exciting the way it sounds. I expected so much more of an oral sensation, which is what you get from Moparts. So I pull out the manual, and I realize there's a button. This button right here. And it changes the experience completely. As a matter of fact, you really shouldn't be using the paddles, but let's go ahead and use them here to downshift to hear that. Oh, listen to that. And that's where you get into some of the genius of the folks at Chrysler. Notice I don't say Stellantis, because this product, it comes from the people that have been designing, engineering, and building magnificently crazy vehicles probably since the 60s. This is the ethos that's engineered into this car. They don't so much focus on the decibels because they know they have to deal with the illegalities of certain municipalities. Instead, they focus on the depth of the sound, so it sounds badass, but it stays within the confines of legal in all 50 states. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game on the options game with today's contestant, something that on paper makes absolutely no sense. But from behind the wheel, all is right in the world. The Jeep Wrangler Rubicon $392 for a base price of, built in, $80,595. Now, as a basis comparison, Tommy had a Willys about a year ago. He bought new. That was like all of 30 grand. Anyway, we press on to the color. This is a limited edition color in addition to being optional. They call this Rain, not like it is now, rather R-E-I-G-N. Get it? Rain like the king, $895. Then we press on to the trailer towing package, $350. Then we talked about with Tommy and Roman the tires. It comes fitted as standard with the 33-inch tires on the 17-inch beadlocks. However, this one has the Extreme Recon package, which is 35-inch tires on the same 17-inch beadlocks. Then we press on to all-weather floor mats, optional on an almost $81,000 vehicle. Why is this $170? Yes, it's the whole playful thing with the rubber, and it's got like the Prospector stuff in there. Then the Sky One Touch Power Roof. So yeah, the roof comes off like a Jeep. There's like a tool that's in a wallet with the whole thing inside the vehicle. But this has the canvas electric sliding roof, kind of like an old Renault Twingo. That is $2,050. Then the integrated off-road camera, $795. Once again, why is this optional on an almost $81,000 off-road vehicle? The biggest, baddest Jeep there is. Anyway, the only other thing we add is the destination handling. From Toledo, Ohio, the engine itself, a HEMI, made in Mexico, $1,595, which brings us to a total retail price of, again, built in, $90,245. Now, something that the Micahs forgot to point out. Yeah, lovely vehicle, rare. That's why if you were to find one at a dealer, which would be hard to do, you wouldn't pay $90,245. You would pay far more than that. Now, between Roman, Tommy, and I, we've established that this is a bit of a Frankenstein in the Jeep world, and I mean that in the most positive way, because it is indeed more than the sum of its parts. The continuation of that theme is with the brakes. Like, for example, the front brakes come from a Gladiator. The rear brakes come from a 4xe. Now, is there enough stopping power here? I'd say overall, yes. But considering the extra horsepower, combined with that extra ride height, which changes the center of gravity, even though they call them heavy-duty brakes, I'd like a little bit more stopping power.
Well, I think we let these fine folks get back to what they originally came here for, MotoMan. Thanks, dude, for letting us come on the show.
Yeah, thanks. Love to collab with you, and when you come out to Colorado next time, maybe we'll get a 392 and put it up against the Bronco directly and see which of these two massive, really popular off-roaders is the off-road king.
Gentlemen, thank you for helping me shoot this vehicle. And yes, I will take you up on your kind offer to compare this directly against the Bronco at your stunning ranch in Colorado. However, one change, can we make it a Bronco Raptor? And we still have to do that Porsche collaboration where we discuss all the Porsches you currently have in your fleet. But back to this. Now, a little bit behind the scenes, I wasn't supposed to get this. It was supposed to be a Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe that was testing for World Car Awards, but there was a scheduling change, so the folks at Chrysler, Stellantis, FCA, whatever they're called now, they kindly offered me this, and who am I to say no? And I've learned something here. These, yeah, very capable off-road, Roman and Tommy will tell you that. However, no one's taking these things off-road. At that price, and for this kind of detail, these are going directly into collections. Why? Because they are the end of an era, just like a Cadillac CT5-V Blackwing with a manual transmission and a Porsche 992 GT3 Touring with a manual transmission. Yes, slightly different carrying case, but the execution, and I specifically use the term execution here, is the same. Governments around the world are twisting the arms of car manufacturers around the world to stop making vehicles like this, which has pushed the collector car market to buy them all at elevated retail prices. But I am just one man, and this is the point of the episode where I turn this around to you guys to opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, if you got value out of this episode, I would greatly appreciate you not only hitting subscribe and notifications, but sharing this episode with all your friends on your socials. Until I see you in the next episode, bis später.